the green, that's the north station. That's down here, the foundation. That's down at the depth, down at the nadir, down, way down at the very deep. Now the beast will go down forever, because the yayo says upward forever and downward forever. But there's always limits. So, I mean, for man. And so we can only go down so far or up so high. But the Great Spirit is always there. And so, by being at the foundation and being one with the Great Spirit at the foundation, which is down at the depth, down at the very base, and then by living there and creating light there, it helps everyone to align with, to become anchored in the light. Because during the time of Cephas, the light came down, and then it came down into man and anchored him in earth. So man is anchored down at the foundation, or down in the depths. He's anchored. And so by living in the light in the foundation, it helps everyone in their own anchorage. It helps them to anchor in the S, anchor in the light rather than anchor in self. And so that's what I meant by working in the green. Because man is still coming out of the darkness, he's still dripping with the dross of the uncleanness. And so it helps man to have a place of light. It gives him hope, you know, that there's a way forward and upward and out away from the strife that seems to be everywhere with him. The green is for, well, we can read this in Olaspi, it's for the diseased in spirit. Well, let's not misunderstand this. It doesn't mean that if you have the green light, or you can hold a green light, that you have that type of a spirit. But what it means is that type of a light is healing. It's a healing light for those who are diseased in spirit, the green light. But we don't have to live in the green light. We can live in the white light, in the light of the Almighty. And as that radiates outward and comes to the anchors of the other people who are anchored in the earth, they will, if they're diseased in spirit and all that, they'll perceive the greenness of it. They'll perceive the green light of it. And now remember that green, one of the meanings of the green light is corporeal harmony, or harmony of the soul. So because we're living at that foundation of light, we have that harmony of soul by serving Jehovah and by aspiring high and our good diet, that we can live and be emanating this, irradiating this light of cleanliness and purity, and even of holiness. You know, I mean, it's. But the idea, though, is that when it comes through and radiates outward, who it comes to, depending upon what they need, they're going to perceive the green light. Now they might even perceive it as brown light, another light that helps the diseased in spirit. And that brown light, and that has to do with being sociable too. And so that, because, well, now you've had seers in the past who have seen the brown, and they notice that people who have the brown light seem to be kind of selfish. So they say, well, if you have brown in your aura, you're selfish, kind of thing. Well, that may be true on a certain level, but on another level, it may represent a way out, an avenue of ascension through a sociability and through just being able to rise into, I mean, ultimately we want to get to white light. Now, white light is the combination, is all lights. It's all lights whatsoever. So it's the highest light. And now, not everybody's going to perceive the green light, because if they can rise above that foundation, they might perceive the light as a yellow light, or as a blue light, or as a red light, just depending upon where they are. Or they might perceive it as a white light, or they might there's all kinds of possibilities as to how they're going to perceive it. And of course that gets into the beast too, the corners of the beast and the extremes as to how they perceive the light and so forth. And so now we can't do much about how people are going to perceive lights, except to the extent that if we're ourselves are coming from a good place, then we're protected. We're protected in that goodness. And regardless of how somebody else will take that light and interpret that light, it doesn't really matter, because in the sense of your own protection, and light is light. Now somebody may twist the light and use it for wrong purposes and all that, but still light is light. And so they might just go like this on little tiny steps, you know, up like that, little tiny steps, and it may take them a long time to get to where they need to go, but it's still, you know, it's still a little bit of light, and so it's helpful for them. There are people who, okay, well, that they prefer to labor in a certain light, and that's okay too. You know, they might perceive, right, I mean, they might prefer to labor in a yellow light, or in a blue light, or a red light. And you know, that's everyone has that option. Everybody has freedom to do what they want. Whether it's wise that they should do so or not, that's up to them and Jehovah, you know, the Creator.
Yeah, well, the green light in the depths and corpora is the outermost, deepest, densest, and it's interesting that the medicine in corpora is green. Greens are our medicine.
That's right. Yes, the green leaves and the chlorophyll. Well, I had an experience this morning, a spiritual experience, which I guess probably would best be described as a dream. Well, I was with these people who were sort of drawn together. Well, it says in OWASP, you know, that like attracts like in all things. That's you know, the way that Jehovah set up his system in order. So I was trying to figure out what was going on, and then I sort of had a sense, okay, well, people wanted to do something together, and they wanted to make music together. So I thought, well, you know, that's a good idea, and everybody had this sort of camaraderie feeling, a feeling of a good feeling, you know, good things were going along and everything. But we didn't have any. Well, there was no organization per se. There was no. We were just a group of people that sort of were together. It's like there was no leader. There was no leader. So people were just going by they were being inspired by the Spirit that was motivating them and animating them. And at first there were just a few people, and we just wanted to make this beautiful music. And at first there were just a few people together, but then when people come together, well, then the energy increased. Well, that attracted a lot more people, and pretty soon there were, well, I didn't really count them, but it seemed like there was getting somewhere around 10 and maybe over 10, because we started forming into a circle, so we held hands. Initially we started holding hands, but then some people would sort of space off and played, you know, and they were sort of dancing or whatever, and so the circle was never made complete while we, you know, to go into the sacred circle, you know, so we could get inspiration as to how to proceed. And so the energies were scattered, and they never actually coalesced after that. But no one wanted to be a dictator. No one wanted to say, hey, you know, let's, you know, this. We wanted to, you know, be in a circle here with. Now most of the people did, and at times some people held hands. The ones that were dancing, they eventually felt it and they held hands. But then somebody else would break off over here and do their thing and all that. So we never really had a complete circle. And to get the you know, so the group would be as one with like the sense from the Great Spirit as to, you know, how to proceed and everything. Well, that sort of dissipated after a while, but I mean the circle itself sort of just people gave up on it, I guess, so to speak. And so, but everybody still wanted to proceed, and they still wanted to make music. Only now there was. It was like all these different levels of people connecting with each other and not really connecting as a group. So that Jerry at one point, or this guy who was this musician friend who I knew, he stood up and addressed the group. But people were sort of spacing out here and there, and some people would pay attention, others wouldn't. So everything was sort of like scattered and all that. But it was still moving forward because people still had that aspiration that they wanted to do this music, but they couldn't without, you know, somebody taking charge and saying, okay, well, you know, you do this and you do that and you do this and you do that and so forth. And I think there was somewhere around, now it says in Owaspy that when you have 10, a group of 10, unless they're all celibates, it's a group of 8, but when you have 10, like 10 families together or 10 people, then, and you're going to do a project, it's wise to choose someone to then look over, watch the entire thing, keep the entire thing glued together, you know, held together. And I'm not quite sure exactly the numbers that we had, but we kept, you know, we attracted some for a while, as long as we held that aspiration of wanting to do this particular good. It sort of attracted like light moths to a light, so to speak. But because no one wanted to be a dictator, you know, and tell people what to do and all that, and because people couldn't perceive the spirit of the initial spirit of coming together and receiving, you know, from the Great Spirit, from Jehovah, the inspiration as to how to proceed, it just really didn't proceed at all. And then people started just sort of manifesting their other focuses, other foci within their lives. Their standards essentially came forth, you know, the standards that they hold inside. And so some apparently were, you know, still eating meat and maybe some dairy or something like that, you know, eating animal substance anyway, ingesting animal substance of sorts. And so their focus went to that in part, and others sort of had an uncleanness about them. I mean, they moved toward their uncleanness rather than up toward the light. They would move back toward that. Well, at that point, I was brought back into my physical body, and I was thinking about it. And I was actually initially, you know, I could still feel that good feeling of wanting to accomplish and the upliftment of spirit. So that would be what you would call your signs of the times. That would be your espome. The spirit of the times in the milieu there was there for this accomplishment of this good that was coming. Well, we're coming up now into a time of when man's going to feel the inspiration of Te. Well, we're coming up now into a time of when man's going to feel the inspiration of Te more than he has for quite some time. Since all the way back actually in one cycle in the spells in 1882 to 1916. and which is when there was this great pouring forth, particularly of the faith, is out, to manifest towards Jehovah's kingdom on earth. But there were others that were attempting to manifest too their idea of what Jehovah's kingdom on earth would be. Because we're coming up to a time that's very much like that now, we can expect to see that people will be going forth, and so initially, like I said, when I was brought back, I was sort of feeling that the upliftment and the signs of the times, the milieu, and thinking, wow, this was a good feeling. It was good to see my musician friend, but then I started feeling a bit troubled because it didn't really go anywhere. And I mean, the people wanted it to. They were all aspiring toward that, but they lacked the understanding of how to proceed, and so I had to think about well, what was going on here, why, because like I said, no one wanted to be a dictator, and so they wanted the Spirit to move them. But then they reached a point where they couldn't perceive what the Spirit was, which was, first of all, starting with making the circle, the connection. And because there were some that couldn't attain to that, the rest of the group, instead of closing then and creating a circle and leaving out those who weren't going to participate, and allowing them to sort of observe what was going on, so that at least some could build, and then the others could join in later as they perceived. But instead what happened is that the entire thing fell apart because people wanted to include them because they were there, because like attracts like, and there was like aspiration, so you felt that kinship, so to speak, with them, a spiritual kinship. And so you didn't want to really leave them out, but on the other hand, if you didn't close and let them observe from the outside, then the whole thing there would be nothing there for them to observe, and everything would fall back down to that level, and so there was no rise coming, into the higher way of living. So thinking about that, what came forth was the idea of standards. You have standards and practices. And so, and what I mean by standards is that, well, that's what happened. Like when people they came together, they were drawn together by the Great Spirit, and to do some good. But then, because of people's past, and that includes all of us here, because we're all coming and dripping from the dross of the dark period that we went through in the Hiarshan period of Bon. So we're all coming out of that. How does one proceed? Because one feels in their hearts the compassion and wanting to have everyone included, and yet if you do that, then it doesn't go anywhere. And so we have to choose according to standards. What is acceptable with the other people and what isn't, and it has to do with development, and which is practice. And so the people that initially wouldn't go in on the circle, well, they were like young children in a candy store. I mean, there's nothing bad about that. Because there's nothing bad to say about them except they were like young children in a candy store, and they were dancing and frolicking, and essentially in the vibes, feeling good about it, and so they missed that opportunity, or actually they sort of blew that opportunity. Phew, it was gone, and the people who felt all that compassion and everything and wanted them to be a part of it, they lost out too. And if you think about it, these people out there who were doing that would probably feel really badly if they knew that they had caused that to the entire group. And so we have to think, well, what is best, for the people that are inspired, to come together and do stuff? Well, it was very difficult to perceive how to proceed. And because if you can't rise, it says, we learn that in Oahspe, if the way isn't open for you to rise, you'll go downward. And so they were, reverting to their lifestyle, that's the practice thing. That's the practice. And so the lifestyle itself, the practice, is built upon standards. Well, I was thinking about that in regard to faithists, because in the past a faithist was defined a certain way. You have faith in the Great Spirit, that everything and then that everything is going to work out for the better, and that was sufficient for the times, and because that was a progression for man, and from not believing in the Great Spirit. There is a foundation. What we lacked when we brought together like that was a foundation. We didn't have the foundation. What is the foundation? And when we're born, we actually have a foundation. We have an outer foundation, or the first foundation, that we're essentially aware of, and that's the corporeal foundation. The life, we call it life. We have a foundation of life. We all have life in common. That's our bottom line. That's our foundation. Life and the corporeal life, the physical life that we have. But we're also a spiritual entity. So that there is actually an S foundation as well as a corporeal foundation. Now, children, when they're born, actually, they're aware of both foundations, both the S foundation and the corporeal foundation. But then, because of the nature of the way that man is, and through his cultural practice and so forth, that the corporeal tends to get emphasized over the spiritual. And so in children, a lot of times what happens then is that the spiritual gets lost sight of, because the child is taught to focus on corporeal things that are going on, and not necessarily on the S things. Now, the angels of Jehovah still try to help the child, to perceive S and things of the spirit realm. We have these two foundations. So we have the foundation of life, which is a corporeal life. And what are the standards in the corporeal life? Well, that's the standards of the beast. That's the standards of self. We're given ourself, it's given to ourselves. And we build ourselves from that. And we can either build in S, in spirit, or we can build in corpor, the lower foundation. And so we know about the lower foundation. We know about the foundation of the beast, and the hierarchy of the beast, and the pecking order, all that stuff, and the needs of the beast, and all that. And then you have a lot of advocates for it out there in the larger social order, out in the amongst the world's people, so to speak. But here, with the S, and particularly Jehovah's Kingdom, we look to say, well, there is a foundation. There is a higher foundation. And what is that foundation? And now Oahspe has given us that foundation. It tells us. That foundation is what we call the Seventh Era Faithist Foundation. It's actually an order of light, an order of S light. And it's identified by the pledge. The Seventh Era Faithists are identified by their pledge. And so we have this pledge that a Seventh Era Faithist we do. Because what the pledge does is it sets the foundation. It gives us an aspiration, and it gives us practice. It gives us a way to practice, so we can progress from practice, our aspiration to practice, to constitutional growth, to organic growth, to crystalline growth, and so forth. This is a foundation to grow from. And a foundation is just that. It's the bottom line. And so the bottom line, we're given that in Oahspe for Seventh Era Faithist. When a person dies, we're told in Oahspe that there's three things that determine where that spirit's going to go, where you're going to go when you die. So you have three things when we're told in the last bit, when you die. You have your aspirations, and you have your diet, and you have your grade of service. How much time you spend serving others compared to how much time you spend serving yourself. Now those who spend time serving others rather than themselves, that's graded, and the more time you spend, helping the world to become a better place, and doing it for the benefit of all and all that, and for the benefit of doing it for the Great Spirit Jehovah. That type of service, the more you do that, the higher up you can go into the more beautiful, more fulfilling realms of heaven, the higher heavens, the heavens toward emancipation, Etheria, the second heaven up above, the atmosphere that travels with the earth. Any one of those three, if the aspiration is low, if your aspiration is just the things of the earth, well, when you die, any one of those three can anchor you to the earth when you die, and you can become earthbound. If your aspirations are such, and you're just corporeal things, and the corporeal world and the Uzzian system and order, compared to the Faithist system and order, but the Uzzian system and order of the world's people, which is built up on the inorganic first resurrection, which has to do, of course, with the beast, and how do you deal with the beast, and allow for progression, self-progression. That's the inorganic first resurrection, self, and I want to make myself a better person, and how, and to do this and to do that, but it's for self, and you're essentially orienting toward yourself, whereas the organic first resurrection and above orients toward Jehovah and His kingdoms up above, the heavenly kingdoms, the kingdom of the angels that are above being earthbound, that are above being bound by self and self wants and self needs, and the odd thing about it is that the self never gets satisfied serving self. Eventually, they turn to Jehovah and the ways of His kingdom, the ways of His realm, the ways of His government, the heavenly government, because that's the way of peace, the greatest fulfillment for man in his soul and his heart and in his mind. That's all right there. While people might not believe that at first, but then that's why you have exemplars. That's why you have people who you can look at and say, oh yeah, well they're living, like a lifestyle that I would sort of like to, have someday. Now the Ahins, the sacred little people, the short little people, and way in the past, they were the exemplars for humanity, all the way up until about 3,000 years ago. And then we were able on our own to, small groups of people anyway, could live this higher life, this S life, and the Essenes lived the S life, for example, living a life that was fulfilling in spirit, but also fulfilling corporeally. Now they emphasized a whole lot on the spirit, but now in Cosman, which is the era that we're now in, it's the balance between the corpor and the S. And so we want to develop it, this S foundation. We want to know what it is and labor in it, and then experience corpor through our soul. And we still live here, and we can still have good things. It's not like you give up the goodness, because we don't give up the goodness that man has been able to come forth with through his inspiration and his labor and all that stuff. This aspiration part of it is very important, and to aspire toward this fulfillment, this grade of service. If you have a low grade of service, if you're serving yourself virtually all the time, which is grade 1, which is the animal realm here on the earth, it's on the face of the earth. You can't really go up, and you have to, after you pass on in spirit, you got to come back to where the animal substance is, which is on the earth. And that's why we don't eat animal substance, because we don't want to be tied down to the earth. Not only just after when we die, but even now when we're living corporeally, we don't have to be bound down in our spirit to this beastly level. Yes, we have a beast, which is to say we have the animal man, but we also have the S-man, the spiritual man within. So you have the grade of surface that can hold you down, and your aspiration. So if you aspire upward, then, and you have high aspirations, then that's to your benefit when you pass on. And the third thing is the diet, which is that the animal, if you eat animal substance, it's going to hold you down here on the earth. And if you eat pure, clean, well, if you eat vegan food, that allows you to rise to a certain level. And when you have raw vegan food, that allows you to go actually even, it allows you to float higher, so to speak. It allows you to in your spirit, to be connected with the higher spiritual realms up there. If we have all three of those things going for us, a high grade of service and high aspirations and a high diet, then we can rest assured and know, we can actually, more than rest assured, we can actually know that we're going to be going to this beautiful place, because we can already, be tuning into it and starting to live it here in corporeal life, and actually exude it through our very being, our very existence, our very day-to-day living, that we have, to the extent that we can, because we have to bear in mind, like I said earlier, we're still coming out of the dripping with dross from coming out of the dark periods in the last, from the dark period of the last cycle, end of the last cycle. So the seventh era of Faithus, now where do they come in? Well, that's our foundation. And it's to be a clean, herbivorous man and woman of peace, to put away the foreheads of the beast, to worship and serve only Jehovah, to separate ourselves from the dominion of the beast, to adhere to Jehovah and to obey his commands and commandments, and to do good works. So help thou us, thou Almighty, all pure, sweet Jehovah. Thus we recovenant that. Because that is our standard, that is our foundation, the foundation of our standards. That's what we're given in Olaspi. The foundation, that's our foundation. And this is the foundation for the S life. And so, in thinking about those people that came together, in the milieu, as it was coming, in the spirit of wanting to do things, to create music, we didn't share a foundation. We didn't share an S foundation. The S foundation was missing. The aspiration was there. The diet wasn't there in some cases. And the grade of service was varied amongst the different people who were there. We have the option, the choice, because he gives us choice, to choose how we're going to proceed and everything. And the angels of Jehovah, his heavenly realm up there, one of the heavenly realms, because there's lots of heavenly realms, but the heavenly realm of God, who is the Son, called the Son of Jehovah, or a goddess, who is the daughter of Jehovah. Well, they're ordained, commissioned officers for the higher realms, for the higher realms that are way up there in Etheria. In the higher heaven, in the second heaven, the emancipated realms. And so they're here to help us. They're here to help us, not to tell us what to do, but to provide the way so that we can rise upward and onward, upward and onward, upward and onward. And so this standard, if we have the standard, so we're brought together by the spirit of the times. The spirit of the times is such that we feel it, And so we want to get together and create, something. And there's going to be a lot of people in the world that are going to feel this inspiration from day to come together and get together and try to do something. And even though the group that I was in, no one wanted to be a dictator, you might find some here and there that will still want to do that. Or they'll have different standards, and they'll say, well, this is important and this isn't. And this is important, but this isn't. And so all these different sort of groups will form. Well, we call them, Oahspe calls them fraternities. They're like little families and everything. And so we're gonna see here on this earth all these different fraternities forming. And amongst those fraternities will be the Seventh Era Faithist fraternity. We're an order of light. There's sort of a group of us who are, shall we say, aspirants and practicing, getting in the... Well, this whole thing is called the Organic First Resurrection. The Organic First Resurrection is, instead of aligning to self, we align to Jehovah. We align to Jehovah's kingdoms, to Jehovah's way of his government, the way Jehovah's God and his lords. Now, a lord is just a commissioned officer. It's the lowest of the commissioned officers of the Great Spirit. And of course, just like, you have pretenders here on earth, who pretend to be leaders or this or that and the other thing when they're not really. Well, in times past we've had angels, because when you lose your physical body, you just become an angel, you become a spirit. You lose your flesh, but you still remain. And some of them pretend to be gods and lords and all that stuff. And so that's why it's important to tune in and find out what the standards are for the heavenly kingdoms, the true heavenly kingdoms of the Creator up there, the high ones. We're given that standard through Oahspe, what that is for this Seventh Era. That's our foundation. The foundation of the Seventh Era Faithist is what was said in that pledge. But also, the wisdom that's within Oahspe, all that is there. But it's crystallized in that pledge that we give for the foundation. And that foundation, from that foundation then, we can the aspirations, we can aspire from the foundation. The foundation of the Seventh Era Faithist is what was said in that pledge. But also, the wisdom that's within Oahspe, all that is there. But it's crystallized in that pledge that we give for the foundation. And that foundation, from that foundation then, we can the aspirations, we can aspire from the foundation. Lacking that foundation, the aspirations will come from whatever foundations that we have, which would be a foundation of self, essentially. But that foundation of the Seventh Era Faithist, that is the Organic First Resurrection, crystallized, so to speak, or moving. It's based on that S foundation rather than the corporeal foundation. Now, the corporeal foundation is still here, the beast is still here, and we love our fellow creatures because they are, in a sense, they're all relatives. We're all from one great spirit. And so we have a stewardship, a responsibility toward them. But we're not talking about that right now. What we're talking about essentially is the upper foundation, the S foundation. And so how do we, how are we gonna go forward with that? How do we as a people proceed? How do we as an earth proceed? And of course, there will be these different fraternities and all that, and that's the next coming phase in humanity. Now, it's going to take a while for all this stuff to unfold, but unfold it will, and these things will manifest. And ultimately, from all these fraternities, there will be these Seventh Era Faithist fraternities. From these, ultimately, the fraternities themselves, from amidst their interactions and everything, way in the future, way in the future, the fraternities will feel a milieu where they together, will start to look for a higher, better way, and then they'll discover, well, the Seventh Era Faithists have been doing this all along, because they had that S foundation given by God, Son of Jehovah, through his lords, son and daughters of Jehovah, because the lords have dominion over the earth, and where mortals are and all that stuff. Whereas the gods, they have up in atmospheria and up in the etheria, and essentially the higher realms, the realms of pure spirit, rather than the lowest foundation or the lower foundation. They have the higher foundation in their keeping. And all that's going to come and come about to where then people will start to gravitate or move toward this higher foundation, and from that will rise the Father's kingdom ultimately. So that was the troubling aspect this morning, was that you have all these people who want to do all these good things, and it feels so good, to be in with people that you want to be doing something with. Now, in the case this morning, it was music and making music, and to me, the making music thing may be a metaphor. It might be a metaphor, because making music is creating a flow. In order for something to come together that's sustainable on the S level, it has to be based on the Seventh Era Faithist order of light. Now, those who are still there, you're still going to have people who are attempting to do good, and they'll, regardless of what they call the Creator, they may say the universe or the Almighty or whomever, but they're still going to try to manifest this the best that they can and try to help out and everything like that. So you're going to see all these different foundations set out there, and trying to move forward. The Great Spirit, Jehovah, will ultimately unite everyone. So what can we do? Well, what we do is that we live the foundation. We live the foundation in whatever the Great Spirit wants us to do in regard to that, because we all have to ask Jehovah, because that's the thing, is you have Jehovah in charge, and we're told in Owaski, you are until you get up to 10 people, unless they're celibates, then it's 8. You don't need anybody to focus on the whole group of them, because Jehovah himself helps everyone along. But when you get beyond 10, then you have to start having someone specially look for, because things are going to get too scattered for man to do it without it in certain levels. And that levels which you can do without help, that increases as we progress in ascension. And so you have the second resurrection, where you're working together as one without written rules and so forth, and you can do things in us like an organic woven light. It gets easier, so to speak. I mean, to watch the whole, but you still need, someone who keeps an eye on it and says, okay, well, the weave is going to go this way or the weave's going to go that way, because they're looking at the Great Spirit and where the Great Spirit's going, because you want to be one with the Great Spirit and emulate the Great Spirit. And so whoever has the clearest vision of that and can perceive it, that they call it the highest light kind of thing, well, that's the way it goes. But it has to be built, you see, from the inside out in Cosmin now. It has to come from like this, out. In the past it was Cephas, it was this way down, to build our anchor, to get our anchored in the earth and anchored in a surety in the lowest foundation. And now the time has come for us to become anchored in the heavenly. As Seventh Era Faithists, we know that if we have our foundation, which is the covenants, then we can proceed. We can aspire from there. But at least we have a foundation where we can all work from and aspire toward. Because we're herbivorous, clean herbivorous, then we're less likely to be spaced out and be like little children playing in a candy store because of the vibrations and stuff, and be more aware in our mind of what's going on with others and what's going on with the group, and not for the group's sake, and not for anyone's sake except for the Great Spirit's sake. If we align ourselves with Jehovah first, then Jehovah is for all. And so we by serving Jehovah and flowing with Jehovah, we actually end up doing all those things. All those things happen where others get the reap benefits. The whole gets uplifted, and because that's just one of the realities of S life, is that the more you give, the more you get. And so if you're helping everything to become better, then you yourself get uplifted, and you don't even have to think about it, because that's just the way it works. So it's you can get beyond having to concern yourself about yourself. Not that that's easy to do, but that's there's the steps and up progressions, upward and onward. That was the experience this morning, and the importance, and then learning about the importance of standards and foundations and standards and practices, and the rise and what's coming up in the future and all that. So I hope it was helpful for you, and it certainly was. I don't have all the answers. I mean, who has all the answers? The Great Spirit has all the answers. But that's something that I was given to share. I could share if I wanted to, so I think it was a good idea to share. So okay, so blessings of the Almighty Great Spirit, Jehovah.